What if planet Earth was some type of experiment, the culmination of a long term dream of extraterrestrial species from our galaxy to bring life forms together in one place? A living laboratory that we call Project Earth. Some historians argue that the human evolution was spurred by the rise of primates, while other experts agree with the theories based on literal interpretation of biblical scripture. In one version, Adam and Eve mated and had offsprings who populated the globe. Others point to fossil records that indicate that our ancestors was forced off their ancestral African homelands by climatic changes and the sought of new lands for sustenance. Brace yourself, because one of these arguments is so weird and carries some mind-boggling facts that it will challenge your very religious belief and even the history you're being presented with. As our guide, let's follow Samuel Chong on this thrilling exploration into the depths of the Thiaoouba Prophecy, written by Michel Desmarquet, who was allegedly abducted by highly evolved ETs to their distant planet for 9 days and then brought back. Because of this perplexing puzzling of clues, we may never be able to look at the world in the same way again. I'm your host, Roderick Martin. Welcome to Why the Big Secret. I approached Samuel with the request to challenge some of the past misunderstandings. I've taken the first steps in doing so by removing the interpretation of the biblical scripture that implies Adam and Eve offspring populated the entire world.
This is a very good question. Thiaoouba Prophecy talks about Michel Desmarquet's personal experiences of being taken by this group of highly advanced and highly spiritual, compassionate ETs to their planet called Thiaoouba for 9 days and then came back, in which he was informed of a lot of the knowledge in which we have been all wondering about, such as who built the Great Pyramid of Egypt, for what purposes, what happens in the Bermuda Triangle, where we all came from, and as well as the stories in the Bible. So this book answers all the questions that I have in mind when I was young about the paranormal, because it unveils a lot of the histories and mysteries of the things that I've been wondering about since I was young.
My curiosity was piqued. I was determined to uncover the hidden truth in the Thiaoouba prophecy. So I asked Samuel about the X factor, the mysterious power we call God. And as he began to explain the theory of creation, a burning desire swelled up in me. I wanted to believe that there's something more than just science behind our existence.
Roderick, this is important. Well, according to this book, this group of advanced ETs, when first everything was created, it was created by a god, what they call the Great Ether, or a spirit, the Great Spirit, that created everything through his imagination. So he created planets, stars, plants and animals, and human beings. So when it created all human beings, everyone was created equal, and all men are created equal. In fact, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of us, each one of our astral bodies. So besides our physical body, we also have our astral body. So we are part of God, and God is part of us. God is part of us. We can connect direct to God directly without going through an intermediary, such as an organized religion. So we can actually pray, meditate, or just have a good night's sleep by connecting ourselves to our higher self through our astral body. And through our higher self, we can connect to God directly. And this is so because people talk about the Big Bang theory. Indeed, everything was created from a Big Bang. And this is different from what the Christians all say about the creation of the universe, because the Bible contains some of the truth that according to the ETs, but the concept of reincarnation was later removed from the Bible by the different Catholic Church councils for one reason or another.
Finally, we arrive at the heart of the discussion. As someone who values the truth above everything else, I asked Samuel to provide me with the evidence of whether extraterrestrial beings have been playing a role in shaping our past. Is it possible that they have been guiding us a long time? Is the story of Jesus as described in the Bible actual factual or merely a myth?
So one of the questions that I get all the time is, what are the proofs that we can verify from the stories or the narratives of the Bible? Well, since ancient times, this group of the ETs have been watching us and guiding us like our mentors. It can be actually proven from the records of the ancient scriptures in the Bible, such as the destruction of the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. According to the Thiaoubans, they were responsible for the destruction of the two cities because the people in the two cities were so immoral and um, very bad according to the scriptures in the Bible, not just because of sodomy, but if you really look into the scriptures in the Jewish Bible, you can see that the people in the two cities punished the compassionate, loving people. For example, one girl was trying to help a beggar, a homeless person on the street, and she gave him some food, but then she was punished and put to death. So this is the things that the people in the two cities did to the people who were loving and compassionate. So this is why the Theobans decided to punish the people of the two cities, because they were just like cancer cells or malignant tumors spreading out and trying to contaminate people who are in contact with them. So imagine when you have malignant tumors on your body, would you want to keep them growing and keep spreading, or would you want to take them out? This is what the Theobans did. They took them out by destroying the two cities. The Theobans and the ETs also were responsible for leading Moses, helping the Hebrews out of Egypt, and they were responsible for parting the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea, but the Sea of Reeds, by using a force field, parting the water, because it was a shallow sea. And they gave manas to the people, to the ancient Hebrews, so that they wouldn't be starved to death. And it took them about 3.5 years to reach um, where their destination, like Mount Sinai, that area. So according to the Theobans, they helped Moses because Moses was trying to help the Hebrews to escape from the clasp of the ancient pharaohs, because the pharaohs were um, responsible for a lot of the spiritual enslavement of the Hebrews. And but most importantly, according to the Bible and also according to the ETs, the Theobans, they were directly responsible for the birth of Jesus and the coming of Christ. And this is very interesting because according to them, Jesus and Christ are two different beings. This actually explains why there's no record in the Bible that Jesus performed any miracles before the age of 30, and why, when Christ began preaching and when he saw his mother, he didn't call his mother mother, he called his mother woman. I'm a linguist. I know that because of the special relationship between mother and the son, not a single language in the world in which someone would call, under those circumstances, his mother woman, but Christ did. Why? This book explains why, because Jesus and Christ are two different beings. Jesus, born out of Virgin Mary, was indeed born out of Virgin Mary, and he was born from the embryo implanted by the ETs, who was trying to make people believe that someone extraordinary was going to be born that way, and it was going to fulfill the prophecies. And he, even though he was highly spiritual and highly intelligent, having a very good conversation with the teachers of the temple, he couldn't perform miracles. And he went to India. This is why some people say that Jesus went to India and went to China and died in Japan. And this is why you can check it out. there's a tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village, Japan. You can search on internet, check on Google. There is a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan, Shingo, and people can still visit and do research and investigations. That Jesus couldn't perform miracles, and he died in Japan. He had 3 daughters. Christ, on the other hand, was from ET, who was trying to teach people on earth at that time about love and spirituality. And he indeed died on the cross and resurrected 3 days after, just to show people that there's life after death and there's reincarnation. As I mentioned before, the concept reincarnation was later removed from the Bible by the Catholic Church councils. And I think it makes perfect sense because when you really read into the New Testaments of the Bible, you're going to focus on, if you focus on the teachings of Christ, this is the gist of the Bible. It also mentions that the kingdom of God is within you. Christ didn't ask you to follow a specific religious leader or the clergy or the church or the organized religions. He wanted you to connect to God directly because the kingdom of God is within you, as it says in the Bible. So I think this makes perfect sense when you read the Bible from a different perspective.
As evidence of extraterrestrial spacecraft visiting Earth mounts, it's impossible to ignore the truth. Humanity is left to ponder their intentions. Is this an elaborate plaything, or a vast experiment, or something more sinister? Are their motives unfathomable? Or could this be simpler than we realize? We've seen too many cruelty and suffering on our planet, and these aliens could have a hidden agenda beyond what most humans can comprehend. The future will reveal the answer, but for now, remain skeptical of anything that comes from the skies. Stick around. You may be horrified with the simplicity of their true intentions. Let Samuel explain that to us right now.
Yeah, I think this is very important because we have seen a lot of problems in the past, and here is what the ETs suggest how we should respond and solve the problems. The solution lies in love. We should love one another, otherwise we would disintegrate as a society, as people. And we should also use nonviolent resistance because violence never pays. If you look at history, Napoleon and Hitler tried to use violence to conquer large territories and to conquer the world, but they failed because they used violence. The real solution lies in love and the cultivation of minds. That will lead to our spiritual success. And this is the key for uniting all the people together. As we see in the last few years, a lot of countries are increasingly divided by the people, by different political parties, by different ideologies. But there's a solution. If we love one another, if we all believe that we are created by the Creator, God, we are brothers and sisters together, and we should get along and live harmoniously and to really peacefully and to have great collaborations on Earth here in order to survive as a species, as human beings. And we also see a lot of issues with our current economic system and financial systems. It requires concerted actions by the people through nonviolent resistance. This is just like what Dr. Martin Luther King suggested, in whom I greatly respect, and also what Gandhi did in India. Only through concerted actions by the people can we really make the power that is and power that be to really cave to our demands and to listen to our voice. Imagine that we, the people, if we have a strike, if we act together and using nonviolent resistance to act against the current financiers, the people who control the political and economic system or financial system, then we, the poor people, have little to lose. But the rich people, the super wealthy and the financiers, they lose big because they depend and rely on our labor in order to profit. If we stop working for 1 hour, they lose for tons of money because no one would be working for their profit. So this requires a lot of nonviolent resistance and actions by the people. We need to realize that we have the power and the people have the power to do something together. And we need to spread the knowledge that we can really change the world for the future. How to do that? I believe knowledge is power. If we know that we can change the world for the better, if we can change the future for the better, we can do and we can revolutionize the world. And if we know how to do certain things, we are able to respond to the challenges correctly. And let me give you another example. If you know the right way to lose weight, if you know that the processed foods are the culprits of having a heavy weight or a heavy body, then you can just eat fresh and vegetables and fruits in order to lose weight in a healthy manner. So I think knowledge is power. If you know the reasons and the causes of cancer, such as the combination of viruses and and toxins, you can find ways to detox yourself and to inactivate the viruses so that you don't get cancer. So I believe that if you know the reasons and causes of certain things, you can find the solutions and the right ways to respond in the correct manner.
Mystery hangs like a dense fog over the majestic pyramids, with the question of their origin and the purpose that begs for answers and sends chills up the bravest explorer's spine. Who could have constructed such marvels with such unparalleled precision? We can't fathom the technology required to carve these enormous stones into perfect cubes using only primitive tools. Truth seekers would never be contented with them simply of knowing how these ancient monuments were created. The real question is why?
Pyramid is one of the mysteries and people have been wondering about and people ask all the questions all the time. And Roderick, this is a very good question. And I believe that this group of ETs provided a really reasonable and plausible answer about who built the Great Pyramid and for what purposes. The Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually built by a great learned person, a wise person named Thoth, originally from Atlantis. And he built the Great Pyramid of Egypt back 17,000 years ago in 9-year period of time using anti-gravitational technologies and supersonic vibratory systems. So to cut the huge stones in a very precise manner. Because he had a great knowledge, he was able to align the different huge stones in a perfect manner so that when the pyramid is built, it could actually capture terrestrial and cosmic energies, and so that the Great Pyramid could be used as a tool to capture such energies so that the users of the pyramid, such as the ancient pharaohs, could communicate with people on different planets and also to make rain. It's very interesting because University of Reading in the UK did a study. If they project certain energy, what they call the orgone energy, into the sky, they could actually ionize certain parts of the clouds so that the rain would fall. So they did the same thing in ancient Egypt. So archaeologists had evidence that in ancient Egypt, there were a lot of rainfalls around the Nile River where the pyramid was located. So this is the evidence that people can do additional research. And this is not the only pyramid structure that we had on Earth. Back about 200,000 years ago, there was another bigger pyramid on the continent of Lemuria in the Pacific Ocean, built by another group of ETs who came from the planet Arimal X3. They were trying to migrate their people to Earth, and after different tries, they built certain ET artificial structures on the far side of the moon. So this is why some people say there are human structures or artificial structures on the far side of the moon. Yes, there's indeed artificial structures, and they were built by the ETs from Arimal X3, who were actually the ancestors of our Polynesian people on the Pacific Islands. And indeed, there was a great civilization on the continent of Lemuria back 250,000 years ago, and in which they established a very successful and highly advanced civilization over there. And they built a great pyramid that's 3 times as large as the pyramid in Egypt. And that civilization was so successful that they had a lot of technologies, such as using nuclear technology to power their light bulbs. And they were able to use the anti-gravitational technologies to make vehicles that didn't need to use petrochemicals or petroleum or oil, and they were able to colonize different other parts of the world. So this is why you see in different parts of South America and India, and also in different parts of the world, there were kind of like ancient structures or huge stones that were made um, by surprisingly advanced technologies that even if we try to replicate that today, we probably are not able to do so. One example would be the statues on Easter Island, the moas. Um, they were actually built by the ancient civilizations on Lemuria, the continent that actually sunk into the ocean about 14,500 years ago because of an earthquake.
The notorious Bermuda Triangle is an area that brings to mind strange disappearances, folklore based on horror stories, and unexplained mysteries. Things that could make even Captain America wary of an exploration. Samuel has an interesting perspective on this destination. A warning for anyone thinking about exploring it. Do not go to the Bermuda Triangle, he advises.
Some people wonder what happens when planes and ships approach areas near the Bermuda Triangle, and actually, the ETs have given us an answer. Areas on Earth near the Bermuda Triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle, they are actually portals or warps to a parallel universe. So people, planes, or ships near those portals or warps get sucked into that parallel universe. And once they got into the parallel universe, time stops. Unless they know how to get out, they're forever stuck there. Michel Desmarquet actually went inside of our parallel universe and saw what this is like when people are inside of it, when he's inside. He saw people wearing medieval clothes, and he saw people behaving like savages, trying to attack him and the ET. So, in a parallel universe, because time stops, people don't feel any pain, hunger, or thirst. I find that very interesting because um, you might know there's a great researcher called David Paulides. He wrote a series of books called the Missing 411 books, documenting the people who gone vanished when they hike in national parks in the US under strange circumstances. And there are clustered areas in certain locations in the national parks in the US where a lot of people have gone missing. So those are probably the entry points into a parallel universe. And there's one interesting case in which when the corpse of the missing person was found, people find that the bones actually came out. It seemed that the person didn't feel any pain and he walked into his bones. So this matches what Michel Desmarquet personally experienced in the parallel universe, because according to the ETs, people don't feel any pain, hunger, or thirst, and that actually can explain a lot of the missing and strange cases documented by David Paulides. So when you are near a parallel universe, when you discover that the scenes suddenly change, that means that you are entering or about to enter a parallel universe. The way to get out is to go back immediately where you came from without being curious. Because if you are curious, if you go inside further, if you go inside and to look around, you might never come back because the parallel universe are like ribbons or spheres floating in space, and they move their locations constantly. So if they move up, if they elevate to a higher altitude, and if you try to get out, you might fall and injure yourself. So the way to get out is to go back immediately where you originally came from. And this is a tip for those of you who like to hike in in national forests or national parks.
Conversation was coming to a close, but I have one last inquiry that I wanted to pose to Samuel. And as an investigator of unidentified flying objects, people often ask me, was there a connection between ghost and extraterrestrial? He gave me an answer which some may find difficult to accept, but I welcome it with open ears because it was worth asking.
Yes, there are ghosts, and there are people who can actually see and communicate with ghosts. And actually, this group of highly knowledgeable and advanced ETs tell us what ghosts are. It turns out that besides our physical body, we also have our astral body. So when a person passes or dies, the astral body leaves the physical body, and 81% of electrons of the astral body will unite with the higher self after 3 days. And the other 19% floats in nature and remains in nature until they're recycled by nature or when a person reincarnates again. So ghosts are actually formed by the 19% of the electrons of the astral body of the person who just passed away. Because of static forces, ghosts resemble the appearance of the person who was alive or who was living at that time. And because electrons have memories, ghosts frequently haunt the places they loved or hated. So we do have physical bodies and astral bodies, and some people can actually see the astral bodies or human energy fields. So this is some people what they call the auras. And some people like Barbara Brennan and Rosalind Bury and Sean Harribins, they can see, or Sean Harribins, they can see the colors of the human energy fields that emit from the human bodies. And the ETs tell us that the auras are very important for psychic development and also for health in general. When the former NASA scientist Barbara Brennan saw like grayish color in the liver area of her friend, she realized that sooner or later there will be some kind of liver problems of her friend. It turns out that 3 months later, her friend was diagnosed of liver cancer. And this is the reason why auras are important at diagnosing or predicting the diseases of a person. And also, if you're able to interpret the colors of auras, you can immediately tell whether a person is lying or not. This can be handy when you decide which person to vote for in the coming election. Because if you're able to see the colors, you can tell who is lying or not, and you can make better decisions or choices. So this is why a lot of people ask others to interpret the color that they see, and I've been trying to do the same. And you can do some research on the internet to search aura readers and how to interpret auras, and I think you're going to find a lot of very interesting knowledge.
Samuel was very kind in providing us with the chance to understand the book better. Thus, I asked him, was there any other questions that we had not asked? Then he answered reincarnation. It seemed like an appropriate way to finish our discussion. Here's what he had to say about it.
As a certified court interpreter and a Chinese translator, I worked with a lot of doctors and lawyers. So I find this book to be very credible because it contains specific verifiable facts and information that I can verify and do additional research. For example, this book talks about reincarnation, and I did some research on the topic because scientists and researchers and medical doctors such as Brian Weiss and Ian Stevenson, they have provided a tremendous amount of evidence about the existence of reincarnation and people who remembered what their past lives were like with specific information that could be verified nowadays. And this book also listed specific verifiable facts such as Project Westford that the US government launched in the 1960s, putting hundreds of millions of copper needles into space in order to improve the telecommunication signals at that time. And the ETs mentioned that they were responsible for collecting the needles from space because they consider the needles to be harmful for mankind at that time. So that's why, according to the record, the U.S. government failed in Project Westford. Also, the book. Remember the fact that the book was written in the late 80s. The event took place in 1987. The author wrote the book in 1989, way before the invention of the internet, especially given the fact that he lived in Australia at that time, and there was no internet in Australia because Australia was lagged behind um, compared to the US at the spread of the internet usage um, at that time. And also, the author Michel Desmarquet, he was a landscaper, a farmer. He had no knowledge about how to use a computer until he, the day that he passed away. He didn't even know how to type. All the email communication that I had with him was done through his Vietnamese niece, Lily, who typed from Michel Desmarquet's dictations. So, and this book talked about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. Michel Desmarquet never traveled to Japan, and he wouldn't have known that the existence of the tomb of Jesus in Japan. And a lot of people nowadays still don't know about it. And I think with so many specific verifiable facts contained in the book, it makes the book very credible, even to today's standards. And if you really read into the book, you can see that the book really provides a lot of solutions to the problems that we face today. For example, it talks about the biggest problems on Earth. Number one being money. Number two being politicians. Number three, journalists and drugs. Number four, religions. So those are the four dangers on Earth, and it's really applicable today. And they can it really tells us how we can make the world a better world. So the book contains a lot of incredible facts and information. And in the postscript, it says there are far more important and incredible information that the author Michel Desmarquet was not allowed to write about. So that got me extremely curious. I was determined to find out what else that is more important, more incredible that he was not allowed to write in the book. So I tracked him down and located him, and eventually he told me what that was on the second trip. That's the whole motivation that I'm spending a lot of time and effort into promoting the book and the messages in the book, is that we can change the future for the better. The past is already happened, and we can go back to the past, go back to the Akashic record, look at what happened in the past, just like a holographic film. But the future has so many different probabilities. The future depends on our actions and our choices. So I'm trying to give a lot of messages to the people in the world. People believe in prophecies. The prophecies only predict certain probabilities in the future, but we can change the direction of the future for the better if we make the right choices. And I think reading this book can enlighten a lot of the people, can provide people with sufficient knowledge to make the right choices. I would strongly encourage every one of you to read the book and to obtain the knowledge and to make better choices for your personal life and also for our collective life, our collective consciousness, so that we can have a better future.
This was a thought provoking conversation. While some may find Samuel's ideas to be prophetic, others may find it a different conclusion. I only hope that this inspires people to investigate further into the search of knowledge about human origins and extraterrestrial life. And if you're interested, please feel free to visit my website, whythebigsecret.com, and subscribe to my newsletter in order to receive a free copy of the Thiaoouba Prophecy via email. And as well, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Roderick Martin's Why the Big Secret, for further added bonuses. To conclude, let me leave you with this. Your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. And if you watch this video entirety, post the comments. Tell me what was some of the most profound things that you heard in this conversation. I will see you in next week's video.